Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Wednesday, December 9th, 2020, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. Well, it's been a very busy day once again, very busy news day. So we have a lot to talk about tonight. Hopefully you've been reading the articles we posted on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and wasn't able to post as many articles as I wanted to today, so we'll have to do some more tomorrow. But on today's show, so yes, everybody knows yesterday I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Once again, normally I'm on Fridays, but we ended up getting rescheduled, so I was on the Tuesday show. So we're going to share a segment from Roland Martin Unfiltered, and this deals with the Georgia Senate race and the voter suppression that's taking place there in Georgia that we see with the closing of some polling places. There was an update today where in Cobb County they're going to open up two additional polling places. So we'll talk about that. Then we know civil rights leaders, the NAACP and National Action Network, Reverend Al Sharpton, and others met with Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and their team on Tuesday. Okay. And we're going to talk some about what happened. New York Times has had a big article about, well, it wasn't a big article, but they had an article about this. TheHill.com also. Civil rights leaders meet with Biden, Harris, and push for racial justice. And Derek Johnson, CEO of the NAACP, he wants a special envoy for civil rights, Derek Johnson said, quote, he appointed John Kerry to be the climate envoy, reporting directly to him. He said, we believe a national advisor on racial justice should be something equivalent. On today's edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered, the December 9th, 2020 edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered, Roland spoke with Derek Johnson, president of the NAACP. We're going to share an excerpt of that interview, because he explains exactly what he was talking about. Then we see in Georgia, so on Tuesday's show, and how's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. So on Tuesday's show, we talked about what's going on in Georgia with the Senate race, and NBC News had an article, and other outlets reported on this. Georgia counties cut back on early voting. Georgia counties cut back on early voting sites ahead of Senate runoffs, alarming voting rights advocates. Georgia counties cut back early voting sites ahead of Senate runoffs, alarming voting rights advocates. We talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Tuesday, December 8th, 2020 edition when I was on the panel. And then we see a update to this story from the Washington Post today. We posted this on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. After criticism, Georgia's Cobb County restores some early voting sites for Senate runoffs, but there's only two that they're restoring. After criticism, Georgia's Cobb County restores some early voting sites for Senate runoffs. So we're going to talk about what's going on in Georgia. We'll talk about the perceived voter suppression that's taking place there, and the update that came out today. And then I found out today, first I found out from Runoko Rashidi. Runoko Rashidi is a brilliant historian and author and world traveler. Marcus Garvey Jr., the son of Marcus Garvey, passed away at age 90. And we posted the article on our Facebook fan page as well. There's an article from New York Carib News, the New York Carib News, New York Caribbean News. From December 9th, 2020, Marcus Garvey Jr. passes away in South Florida. So we'll talk some about that. Also, Marcus Garvey Jr., the firstborn son of Jamaica's first national hero, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, died in Wellington, Florida on Tuesday, losing his battle with Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so we'll talk about that. And then today, December 9th, is the birth date of one the birth date of Redd Foxx. Okay, the birth date of Redd Foxx. Also, now his real name was John Elroy Sanford. John Elroy Sanford, and he was born in St. Louis. And his father's name was Fred Sanford. His father was Fred Sanford Sr. His brother was Fred Sanford Jr. So we'll talk about John Elroy Sanford and his relationship with Malcolm Little, who became Malcolm X. All right, we'll talk about that and also give you an update on what's going on with coronavirus, because now you all watch my show. You all know I warned our people before Thanksgiving not to travel for Thanksgiving. Don't fly. Don't go through TSA. I warned our people about this, because I said we're going to have a massive increase in cases. There was about 3.9 million people who traveled through TSA that Thanksgiving Day weekend. And we talked about the Center for Disease Control. I'm looking at this article here from NBCnews.com that we reported on back on November 19th, 2020. CDC warns America, do not travel for Thanksgiving. CDC warns America, do not travel for Thanksgiving, citing an exponential growth in COVID-19 cases. Federal public health officials urge people to stay your ass at home. But unfortunately, a lot of people didn't do that. Well, guess what? NBC News reports post-Thanksgiving surge arrives as U.S. breaks daily coronavirus record. The U.S. reported a record high of 222,211 new cases on Tuesday, December 8th. That's a record number of new cases in one day. And then we see on Wednesday, it was a record number of deaths in one day, 3,000 deaths. The chickens are coming home to roost. Maybe we should say the turkeys, because it was Thanksgiving. The turkeys are coming home to roost. We'll talk about this as well. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can sign up for our email newsletter there as well, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. So that really helps us to keep broadcasting the show, keep doing the research, because it's time consuming to do the research. I'm here 6 days a week as of October 12th, 2020. It was 1 day a week, Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're still on Sundays, but we're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. Okay. So I'm doing radio 6 days a week. So when you donate or when you buy DVD lectures, you buy digital downloads, that helps us to keep doing the research. broadcast a show, pay the bills, etc. Okay. All right. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP, on YouTube as well. And we have orders shipping out tomorrow. I was working on orders today, and we're shipping out orders tomorrow. Okay, so let's jump into this. How's everybody doing? Got Miss Watson, looking at some of the people. Al Houston, down. I think Al's in Atlanta. I think that's Al in Atlanta. I got your text message, Al. It's been hectic. I ain't had a chance to get back with you. Al Huston. I got your text message, Al. I'm sorry. It's been hectic, man. Seriously. And I'm trying to schedule interviews and everything. Okay, so let's jump into these topics here. Civil rights leaders, we talked about this some on yesterday's show. Civil rights leaders met with Joe Biden and Kamala and VP-elect Kamala Harris. In a meeting with Biden, the NAACP pushes for a civil rights envoy position in the White House. In a meeting with Biden, the NAACP pushes for a civil rights envoy position in the White House. I'm going to go to that first clip there, Shakita, in just a second. So just cue that one up. We'll go to the clip, Biden to win Electoral College, civil rights groups meet. We're going to that clip in just a second. So Derrick Johnson, the president of the NAACP, pressed President-elect Joe Biden Jr. on Tuesday, December 8th, to create a civil rights envoy position in the West Wing that would report directly to the president, Derrick Johnson said, quote, he appointed John Kerry to be the climate envoy, reporting directly to him. Derrick Johnson said in an interview before a meeting with Biden in Wilmington, Delaware, that included other prominent civil rights leaders, including Reverend Al Sharpton, who you can hear here on 910 a.m. Superstation, WFDF Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, keeping it real with Reverend Al Sharpton. Quote, we believe a national advisor on racial justice should be something equivalent. We believe a national advisor on racial justice should be something equivalent. Now, after an election that unfolded amid nationwide protests against racial injustice and police violence, the civil rights leaders said they also planned to lean on Joe Biden to fill more top-tier cabinet positions, including Attorney General with African-American appointees. While the Attorney General oversees civil rights compliance and enforces federal statutes prohibiting discrimination based on race, Derrick Johnson, president of the NAACP, said a new position focused solely on racial justice, would have a broader mandate across government agencies. Quote, this would be advancing equity and governance in budgeting and resources. This would be advancing equity in governance, in budgeting, and resources. So as I talked about on Roland's show yesterday, they are pushing their agenda early on. They're not waiting for all the decisions to be made and then say, but why didn't you do this? They're pushing their agenda during the decision-making process. I want to go to this clip. Roland spoke with Derrick Johnson today about that meeting that took place on Tuesday with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
Yesterday, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the president-elect and the VP-elect, both met with civil rights leaders to discuss a variety of issues, including his cabinet appointments and his agenda when he becomes president. During the meeting, the groups touched on racial equity, social justice, and increased diversity in the Biden-Harris cabinet. Now, of course, we talked about this on yesterday about this very thing. Now, in an interview prior to meeting with them, Biden said, quote, their job is to push me and my job is to keep my commitment and make the decision. Joining me now is NAACP President Derrick Johnson. Derrick, glad to have you on Rolling Unfiltered. First off, we look at news coming out that he is going to name Congresswoman Marsha Fudge as Secretary of HUD. today, of course, unveiling retired four-star General Lloyd Austin as his Secretary of Defense, and picking Tom Vilsack to head the USDA. And then, of course, we're still waiting for the other cabinet positions. So far, how would you assess the picks being made for not only administration jobs, but also cabinet level jobs by the Biden-Harris White House?
Too early to tell. We have another 10 or so cabinet positions to be selected. There are over 4,000 appointments to be made. Only about 1,300 require Senate confirmation. And so we are early in the process. As an organization, we want to make sure we set a cadence in terms of our compensation. For us, it's more about the policy priorities. So no matter who is selected, there is a clear accountability dealing with racial equity, something that he said that he will be accountable for.
And when you talk about him being accountable for racial equity, you talk about this position that was mentioned yesterday when it comes to racial equity.
Absolutely. You know, if you say one of the four pillars of this administration would do a racial equity, then we want a follow through on that commitment. We think it's a good thing. It's a forward-looking approach. And the only way to make sure that happens is create a portfolio that someone manage that portfolio to ensure racial equity goes across all departments. Very similar to what he did with climate, which is another pillar. He created a post for a climate envoy that's a direct advisor to him to address issues of climate. We want the same thing for racial equity.
But is that necessary? But when you talk about a particular position, or is that really about, again, the individual who has the authority to execute what needs to be happening? I think about Bob Brown. Bob Brown, of course, served in the Nixon administration. He was an MLK he was a lieutenant to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. before going to the Nixon administration. Go to my iPad, please. This is a cover of his book. That is, You Can't Go Wrong Doing Right, How a Child of Poverty Rose to the White House and Helped Change the World. I interviewed Bob. Bob, of course, lives in High Point, North Carolina. I interviewed Bob. And one of the things that we talked about, he said, you have to have, you've got to have the full backing of the president to be able to get these things done. When he served in that capacity, he's arguably in history the most powerful black presidential aide. And when he met with folks, when he met with departments, when he got the 4-star for Chappie James, when it came to the MBDA, it was made perfectly clear. Nixon says what Bob wants, Bob gets. That's how it has to get done. Biden has to give that type of authority to someone to make these things happen.
And that's why.
Hey, pause it right there, Shakita.
Directly to the president.
We'll take a commercial break. Okay, we're going to pick it up on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. How's everybody doing? Stand by. We'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, everybody, share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Okay, we've got Erica. How you doing, Erica? Old Gamer. Got people tuned in. These shows are podcasted also in video format on the African History Network on Facebook, Michael Imhotep on YouTube, but also an audio podcast format as well. Audio podcast format also on 9 different podcast platforms. Okay. African American Business. So we're on iTunes, Castbox, iHeartRadio, TuneIn. If you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on listen to podcasts, you can it takes you to our Blog Talk Radio page. You can listen to our podcast, but wherever you get your podcast from, search for the African History Network show. African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. Email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Got a few more spots left. Okay. Erica. And then also, if you all like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App. And then through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. We'll rebroadcast on a lot of shows throughout the day on our social media platforms. So be sure to check that out also. All right, stand by. We'll be back from commercial break and should be about 1 minute. Okay, stand by, everybody. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. It is Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. I'm used to, so for 4 years, I did Sunday nights here on 910 AM WFDF. And October 12th, we started doing Monday through Friday. So I had to get used to that. Sometimes I would slip up and say it's Sunday and it's Tuesday. So I think I have it pretty much down pat. It's been 4 years since I used to do nasty syndicated radio. It's been 4 years since I did, radio like 5 days a week. And basically, if people know me, I said I wasn't doing that again, but, so opportunity came up for an hour a day, and Kevin Adele, station owner, said I could do it from home. So I said, okay, all right, I'll do it. You caught me on a good day. So here I am. So right before the break, we were talking about the meeting that leaders of civil rights organizations had with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, President-elect Joe Biden, and Madam VP-elect Kamala Harris on Tuesday, December 8th. Numerous articles were written about this. Now, prior to that, we talked about this. We talked about it on our show, and we talked about the fact that the civil rights leaders were saying that they had not met with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris since the election, and they were not being consulted about certain different positions, things like that. Okay, so this meeting took place on Tuesday, and when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Tuesday, December 8th, we talked about it some, and then today Roland interviewed Derek Johnson, president of the NAACP. I want to go back to another excerpt of that interview. Let's go back to that clip, Shakita.
It has to be accountable to the president, and it must be a person who's carrying out the vision of the president that's clearly defined and that all departments and cabinet posts should adhere to. Racial equity is not about one cabinet versus another. It is everything that's done within this administration writ large. And in order for that to be effective, someone must hold that portfolio. Someone must be accountable for some outcomes that are measurable. And the outcomes that are measurable are directed through the West Wing from the president's office. And this person is holding that portfolio. Is it a direct report to the president?
So we look at Congressman Cedric Richmond, who's going to be over the Office of Public Engagement. He was a part of this conversation yesterday. Would that not be his portfolio? Would that not be something to do, or is this something separate?
So this is separate. I think Cedric Richmond is an advisor to the president. He brings much more in terms of skills, knowledge, and relationships. If his position becomes that, then that's the discretion of the president. We are saying that there needs to be a specific person who is responsible for racial equity. That's the request.
And what was the response?
It was an ongoing conversation. There were no response or demands. This is the first of several conversations that we will be having around a myriad of topics. This is the request from NAACP. There were conversations about all facets of the administration. And how do we establish an ongoing dialogue to make sure we are providing opportunity to give input as he also share progress of the administration?
Earlier today, he unveiled his pick for the Pentagon, that is retired four-star General Lloyd Austin. Folks, if y'all can roll some of that video, no need to play the audio yet. And of course, and already people on Capitol Hill who are saying that that a waiver should not be granted to allow Lloyd Austin to serve as the first African American to serve as Secretary of Defense. Of course, a waiver was given when James Mattis was named by Donald Trump to be the Secretary of Defense. You have to be out of the military at least 7 years. Austin retired 4 years ago. Has the NAACP taken a position on that? Do you support Austin becoming the Secretary of Defense? And are you calling on Democrats and Republicans to grant that waiver to allow Lloyd Austin to serve?
If he's qualified to serve in office, if we have set a precedence of providing waivers, absolutely. There is no reason why he shouldn't be treated any different than General Mattis when he was situated in the same posture. We need individuals who can instill confidence in our armed forces. We have just witnessed the sitting president allowing a foreign nation to take a bounty out against men and women who are serving in the military with no repercussion. So we have to instill more confidence for individuals who are making the ultimate sacrifice to protect the nation. I believe General Austin, it would be a fine addition to the cabinet.
But there are Democrats who, first of all, about 17 of them who voted against giving the waiver to Mattis already. Folks like Senator Elizabeth Warren have said they would not grant a waiver to Austin. Some people are even saying that with this being the case, Democrats could very well torpedo Lloyd Austin serving as Secretary of Defense. What would that say to African Americans, especially to Black folks in the military, that potentially the first Black Secretary of Defense would not be able to take that job because Democrats say they will not grant such a waiver, saying they believe that only a civilian should be in charge of the Department of Defense?
I think it's too early. Yeah, we have not even started the new Congress. We have a special election that is taking place January 5th. There probably will be many more conversations about this topic. And as people consider and weigh options, opinions and positions will evolve.
I want to ask you also.
Hey, pause it right there, Shakita. Okay. All right. So check out the December 9th, 2020, Wednesday, December 9th, 2020 edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered in its entirety. You can watch the rest of that interview, Roland Martin on YouTube and Roland Martin on Facebook. And those watching here on our social media platforms, we posted the link here. Now, there wasn't all Democrats that were against Lloyd Austin getting a waiver to become Secretary of Defense. It's 17 who've come out now, but also I'm hearing that it's expected that some of those 17 are going to come around after his hearing takes place and things like that. That's what they say now, but it's believed that some of those people will come around, especially after they say, well, wait a second, you gave a waiver to the white guy, James Mattis. You gave a waiver for him. Now it's an African-American man who's going to be the first one to be Secretary of Defense. Now, all of a sudden, now you don't want to give a waiver to him. And he's somebody who's competent. Okay. He's somebody who's competent. And after a chaotic presidency. Okay. After a chaotic 4 years with Donald Trump. Check out the article from New York Times. In a meeting with Biden, the NAACP pushes for civil rights envoy position in the White House. So the article goes on to say it's written by Annie Carney, Karni, Annie Carney. The article goes on to say, but Mr. Johnson, Derek Johnson, said he viewed the creation of an official post of a, quote, national advisor on justice, equity, and advancement, complete with a fully staffed office, as a natural outcome of the promises Joe Biden had made during his campaign, as a natural outcome of the promises Joe Biden made during his campaign. Quote, he talked about racial justice equity. He talked about racial justice equity. Okay. In order for his vision to come to fruition, there should be someone who reports to him with that sole responsibility. So they're holding Joe Biden accountable for the campaign promises that he made. This is what I said you have to do. This is understanding politics. Politics is not just voting. After the election takes place, the other side of the election is holding the elected officials accountable for the promises that they made during the campaign. This is what's taking place. Okay, so then they talk about a interview that Joe Biden did last week with CNN. In an interview with CNN last week, Joe Biden noted that, quote, every advocacy group out there is pushing for more and more and more of what they want. This is what Joe Biden said last week, CNN. Every advocacy group out there is pushing for more and more and more of what they want. That's their job, end quote. Biden defended his first 8 picks as, quote, the most diverse cabinet anyone in American history has ever announced. But Biden is saying it's their job. All these advocacy groups out there are pushing for what they want. When African Americans do the same thing, I've seen African Americans on social media say, "Why?" He said, "Why are you criticizing Biden's pick? Why are you trying to meet? Why are you making these demands? All this stuff." It obviously you don't understand politics. This is what everybody else is doing. African Americans voted at a higher percentage than any other demographic, any other ethnic group, any other race. So what? We gonna let everybody else meet and push for what they want, and we sit back and just watch everybody eat off the work we did? That's stupid as hell. That don't make any sense. That's not logical. That's not logical. So, sometimes making a cake is not pretty. Sometimes, people eat sausages, but you don't want to see the ingredients. You don't want to see the sausage making process. Sometimes it's not pretty, but they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Reverend Al Sharpton talked about this today on Keeping It Real. You can listen to Keeping It Real Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. right here on 910 a.m. Superstation WFDF. You can download the iHeartRadio, listen to the shows all throughout the day. Definitely listen to the African History Network show. If you can't watch us, you can listen to, iHeartRadio 910. Listen on your AM dial, 910 a.m. WFDF here in Detroit. Around the country, iHeartRadio watch right here, Facebook, the African History Network. Our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, and 910 a.m. Superstation WFDF's Facebook page. Follow them there as well. You watch there also. Okay. You can watch on your phone on the African History Network, and you watch on your computer 910 a.m. and you can download the iHeartRadio app to another phone and listen all at the same time. Okay. So you can do that. All right. So they're doing what they're supposed to do, man. Some people just scared. Some people just we're going to vote, but we're not going to, on the other side of the election, we're not going to enforce our vote. Okay. And what Reverend Al Sharpton and what Derek Johnson was saying was they were talking about the characteristics of the people who head up these different departments, the Attorney General, Secretary of Agriculture, and these people have to embody the vision that Joe Biden was talking about during the campaign about what he wants to do. You can't put people in charge of these departments that are totally opposite of what you said you want to do. Okay, so and we have to keep pushing. This is the game. This is what you do. But what I want people to understand is that this is what every other ethnic group are doing. This is what every other interest group, advocacy group, ethnic group, Hispanics, Asians, LGBTQ, climate change people, this environmental people, this is what everybody's doing. When we do it, all of a sudden it's a problem. Okay, next story. Speaking of problems, in Georgia, there's rampant voter suppression taking place in Georgia. Now, on yesterday's show, we talked about Georgia counties cut back early voting sites ahead of Senate runoffs, alarming voting right advocates. Big story from NBCnews.com. We talked about that on the Tuesday show. Call-in number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a quick question or comment. Okay. So on the Tuesday, December 8th edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered, I was a panelist. And we talked about what was going on in Georgia and the voter suppression, but we also talked about Shelby County versus Holder, 2013 U.S. Supreme Court case. Okay. We're looking at Cobb County in Georgia. Cobb County slashes early voting sites. Let's go to this clip, Shakita. This that should be clip 1 from Roland Martin Unfiltered. Cobb County slashes early voting sites. Ossoff speaks Biden COVID.
Joe, all eyes on the nation are on that particular state, and folks, already Republicans are playing shenanigans when it comes to voting. Cobb County has announced that they will eliminate over half of the county's early voting locations. Being that many of these locations are in Black and Latino communities, the move will disproportionately affect people of color. Several groups, including the NAACP and the Southern Poverty Law Center, Black Voters Matter, and the ACLU of Georgia, sent a letter to the Cobb County Board of Commissioners and Cobb County Board of Elections and Registration to express their concern. The letter stressed the importance of early voting accessibility, stating that advanced voting opportunities are vital to ensuring voters can safely, securely, and freely participate in our democracy. The COVID-19 pandemic, which is ravaging the nation, has had extremely harsh effects in communities of color, especially African Americans. And so what they said is that, again, they say it is an untenable option for many voters. Now, activists are hoping Cobb County election officials are going to reverse their decision. Cobb made a decision, they said, because due to the drawn-out proceedings of the November 30 election, because of also the holidays, they don't have the additional personnel needed to have those locations open. But there was a significant turnaround in Cobb County this year going for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. Cobb County also is the third most populous county. Listen to me clearly. The third most populous county in the state. And so voting rights advocates say this is an attempt to improve the chances of Kelly Loeffler, as well as David Perdue, in their battle against John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. Ain't that grand? Folks, do we have our guest ready? Let me know, please, to talk about this here. This is a huge deal. I do want to bring in my panel as well. Michael Imhotep, host the African History Network show. Candace Kelly, legal analyst, and Rena Shaw, the Lincoln Project Women's Coalition. We're going to talk in a second to the spokesman for the Warnock campaign about this very issue. I want to go to you first, Michael, and that is this here. Again, the reason we have problems is because of this goes back to Shelby v. Holder decision. The U.S. Supreme Court determined that it was unconstitutional, the whole issue of preclearance. All right, gutting that particular section. Republicans have refused to fix that. As a result, since that decision, Republican-led states have been rushing to put in voter suppression. If Shelby v. Holder had not been ruled, if the Voting Rights Act was still intact, then they would have had to get permission from the Department of Justice to make one of these moves. This is one of those lasting impacts of that Supreme Court decision.
Absolutely, Roland, and thanks once again for having me on. So Shelby County versus Holder is extremely important 2013 U.S. Supreme Court case. And when I speak across the country prior to COVID, I would ask many African Americans about that court case, U.S. Supreme Court case, and they didn't know about it. You got to go back to 2012 presidential election. That preceded 2013, and there was a record number of the turnout percentage-wise of African Americans voting in that 2012 presidential election that President Obama was on the ballot was a record number. 66.6% of African Americans registered to vote voted. And based upon my research, that was the first time the percentage of African Americans voting was higher than the percentage of white people voting. Shelby County versus Holder was a backlash to that. And what happens is, Roland, is that because many of our people don't understand history, we don't understand these cycles of backlash that take place. Okay, whether we talk about the end of Reconstruction, whether we talk about the end of the Second Reconstruction, and Richard Nixon being elected in 1968, running on the platform of law and order, which is a backlash to the Black Power movement, the Civil Rights movement, all of that. So right after Shelby County versus Holder, you had all these new states that started coming out with new voter ID laws. And then this impacted the 2016 presidential campaign, where there were 868 fewer polling places. We're not, a lot of people, you connect the dots, but a lot of our people don't know that these dots exist to connect them. Because of Shelby County versus Holder U.S. Supreme Court case 2013, and you had these Republican-led states that started shutting down these polling places because they didn't have to get clearance from a federal judge. Ari Berman, who wrote the article that you are going to talk about for Mother Jones, Ari Berman wrote a series of articles for The Nation during the 2016 presidential election dealing with this, and he has one that talks about how there were 868 fewer polling places. Today is somewhere around 1,600, 1,700 fewer polling places. So we have to understand how all these dots are connected. And lastly, if the African-American vote did not matter, we have to ask ourselves, why do people work so hard to suppress our vote? Why are they going to the U.S. Supreme Court? Why are they shutting down all these polling places? Many of them in African-American and Hispanic, largely populated communities. So we have to understand this history and understand anytime you have periods of time of perceived advances by African-Americans, there's always a white backlash. Yeah, you got to understand that history to be able to defend and block against that backlash.
Candace, again, Cobb County says we simply don't have the staff. Are you buying that?
I am not buying that. And neither is LaTosha Brown of Black Voters Matter. And I want to quote her by saying there's one thing that you can counter Republicans for, and that is being racist and voter suppression. And they have stepped up and they have risen to the occasion. And so in this situation, we see that the machine continues to work to make sure that the numbers of Black folks cannot get to the polls. I mean, if we look at the overarching, just everything that's going on, from what Donald Trump is doing on down, this is really kind of like an overthrowing of the government. If we look at what that means, we're looking at people who don't want certain people to be in place. And that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing. And all the way down, all the Republicans in Georgia are working under the same kind of premise that Donald Trump is working on. And that's what we are seeing here. But as LaTosha Brown said, and as everybody has said who's been working on the ground in order to make sure that these places aren't closed, they are not having it. They are going to work. They are in the trenches. They are working right now. This is something that wasn't a surprise. So they already have their plan B in action.
All right, pause it right there. Pause it right there, Shakita. Please, thank you. Okay, so that was from the December 8th, Tuesday, December 8th edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out the full show in its entirety. Roland Martin on YouTube and Roland Martin on Facebook. We'll share another excerpt on tomorrow's show. Okay, so on the readout with Joanne Reed, they talked about this as well. Jonathan Capehart was sitting in for Joy Reid, the December 8th, 2020 edition. Georgia reducing voting locations ahead of runoffs. Georgia reducing voting locations ahead of runoff. And he talked about the article from NBC News that we talked about on yesterday's show. Georgia counties cut back early voting sites ahead of Senate runoffs, alarming voting rights advocates. Civil rights and voting rights groups warned that the reduction will particularly harm Black and Latino voters. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
Before we go, I have to ask you about this headline that we have at NBC News. Georgia counties cut back early voting sites ahead of Senate runoffs, alarming voting rights advocates. 4 of the 10 most populous counties in Georgia are reducing the number of locations where people can vote early in the state's Senate runoff races. Cobb County, the state's 3rd most populous. Election officials have announced 5 early voting locations, fewer than half of the 11 used for early voting ahead of last month's general election. The Senate runoff elections are January 5th. Your reaction to the news in that story, and how will that really impact voter turnout?
It's deeply concerning, but what I've said all along is that we can't rely on the Republicans in this state to implode. We can't. We've got to show up and vote. We've got to show up and vote in record numbers. And so often people don't come back to runoff elections. Many people don't even understand the concept of a runoff election. It's the reason that we are encouraging people, we're educating people, and we're telling people go and vote early. Clearly, there is an attempt to make it even more difficult in the state of Georgia to vote, but we can't use that as an excuse. What really concerned me, when I look at the numbers from the November election, we had a record turnout in the state. Nearly 5 million people turned out to vote, but nearly 1 million African Americans who were eligible to vote did not show up and vote in November. So we've got to continue to make the case as to why elections matter, why this runoff is so important, to have the opportunity to send 2 senators from this state is an opportunity that I've not seen in my lifetime. And we've got to do our part and not worry about the rest.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and Michael Steele. I can't wait to hear what Letzog has to say about your backdrop tonight.
All right, pause. Okay. All right, thanks, Shakita. Okay, so that was pause. Right. Say it again. Okay, that was Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms of Atlanta talking about Cobb County and the voter suppression taking place there. Okay. So that was the Tuesday, December 8th, 2020 edition of the Readout, Joanne Reed's show on MSNBC. So today, New York Times, Washington Post. Washington Post has an article, update to this story. After criticism, Georgia's Cobb County restores some early voting sites for Senate runoffs. After criticism, Georgia's Cobb County restores some early voting sites for Senate runoffs. The Cobb County Elections Office, which drew fire from voting rights groups when it closed more than half of its early voting sites for the upcoming Senate runoffs, has tweaked its plans, but will still have fewer locations for residents to cast ballots in advance. Cobb County, which is the 3rd most populous county in the state of Georgia, with more than 537,000 registered voters, had reduced its early voting sites from 11 in November, just last month, 11 in November in the general election, to 5 for the January 5th, 2021 runoff elections. Okay, between the two Senate seats, which have captured national attention, these 2 Senate races, because the outcome could decide control of the U.S. Senate. The NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund sent a letter to election officials protesting the plan to shutter 3 of the 4 sites in the southern part of the county, which had the highest concentration of African American and Latino voters. The new plan would relocate 1 polling place to a recreation center in the southern part of the county and add 2 locations during the final week of early voting. Okay. Now, they talked about Shaquille Brewster of NBC News was in Cobb County. And he spoke to a Cobb County official in Georgia about the decision to reduce the amount of early voting locations for the Senate runoff race. Let's go to this clip.
The stakes are pretty high in Georgia. The state's 2 Senate runoff elections are in just 27 days, and the winners will decide who controls the chamber. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster joining me now from Atlanta. Shaq, what are the candidates and their supporters up to today?
You're seeing a lot going on. I started this morning at a rally with the union, Hospitality Workers Union, and they were planning to knock on over 1 million doors by January 5th, and they were doing a kickoff celebration today. But as far as the candidates, you're seeing John Ossoff out. He's in Macon, Georgia right now. His event is actually probably wrapping up as we speak. And then Senator David Perdue. His campaign hasn't been advising many of his stops, but we do know he had a stop in Hartwell, Georgia today. So we know they're out there. They are in force. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was actually in Atlanta this morning. It wasn't a campaign event. It was an official event, but we've been seeing the Secretary of State make politically timed stops, we should say. The message isn't political, but politically timed, of course, just a couple of weeks before this runoff election. Allison?
Okay.
Jack, early voting starts Monday. We know 4 of the state's largest counties are cutting the number of early.
No, keep going. Keep going with the clip. Sorry. I thought it was
tracking a little bit. What changes to the changes did they announce this afternoon?
Just a little bit. You know, in November, during the election, or really before November, but for November's election, they had 11 early voting locations available for residents. They announced earlier this week that number would be just 5. Well, earlier today, they announced that they'll have 2 additional early voting locations, bringing that total to 7 for the 3rd week of early voting. That's the last week before Election Day. I spoke to an official here at Cobb County. You know, many voting rights groups have been saying that's a form of voter suppression, shrinking the number of early voting locations. And I asked him, is that an example of voter suppression? Here's what he told me.
We'll monitor things and see how things are going at all our advanced voting locations and make additional adjustments if necessary. I think one of the things that we were expecting when we went into this is that, unlike November, this is a short ballot. There's only 2 races on the ballot. The check-in process for getting people in has been much smoother during the last advanced voting process. So we assume that people will be able to get into these facilities faster and get out quicker and take some of the burden off the wait times.
And it was just before that where he said flatly, no, it's not a form of voter suppression, that it's more of a reflection of staffing shortages. Allison?
All right, Shaq Brewster at Atlanta. Thank you.
okay. So that's from MSNBC, NBC News Now. That clip, December 9th, 2020, Georgia County adds voting locations to already reduced amount for Senate runoffs. You can check that out at NBCnews.com. If we go back to the article from the Washington Post, it goes on to say, Janine Eveler, Eveler, Janine Eveler, elections director for Cobb County, said that she scaled back the early voting sites because she did not have adequate staffing. She scaled back the early voting sites that for December. She scaled them back because she did not have adequate staffing that she had last month, November. She says she started this election cycle with fewer seasonal workers because some were afraid to work because of the pandemic. Okay, they worked last month. Eveler said, now these are paid, from my understanding, these are paid positions also. Eveler said workers were exhausted after the intense general election, which featured hours-long lines and increased voter turnout and glitches with a new voting system, as well as 2 recounts as Donald Trump and his supporters protested his loss to Democrat Joe Biden. Okay. Quote, between COVID, the workload, and the holidays, we have simply run out of people. Many workers told us they spent 3 weeks working 14 or 15-hour days, and they will not do that again. We simply don't have time to bring in and train up more workers to staff the number of locations we had for November. So check out the rest of this article. This is from the Washington Post. After criticism, Georgia's Cobb County restores some early voting sites for Senate runoffs. This is from December 9th, 2020, written by Vanessa Williams. Okay, not that Vanessa Williams. Okay. And then also, now we're going to continue this discussion on our social media platforms because we're almost out of time here on 910 a.m. Superstation WFDF. We'll talk about the passing of Marcus Garvey Jr., as well as remembering Redd Foxx, John Elroy Sanford, who was born December 9th, 1922. And we'll talk about the relationship between John Elroy Sanford, Redd Foxx, and Malcolm Little, who became Malcolm X. So watch us at our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. Those watching us right now, keep watching. We're going to continue. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. and at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button. You can donate there. You can also set up for a recurring donation through PayPal if you want to. All my DVD lectures are available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, as well as digital downloads of my lectures. And you can read articles I've written. We also have a recommended reading list of about 70 books at our website, also AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, so we're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, and Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, right now, it's correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Stay tuned for Greg Davis and then Michael Baisden after that. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right, stand by, everybody. All right, let's continue. All right, how's everybody doing? Share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Also, African American business owners, post the name of your business here in the thread of the broadcast, and email us at customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network also. Okay. All right. How's everybody doing? Okay, so let's continue. And I want to give a quick update on what's going on with coronavirus also, and then we're going to get out of here. So we're at 3,000 COVID live updates and vaccine news. More than 3,000 die on deadliest day in U.S. Millions of people in the U.S. and across the world could be vaccinated this month. For the first time, more than 3,000 COVID-19 related deaths were recorded in the U.S. on Wednesday, December 9th. More than 290,000 people have died from the coronavirus across the country since the beginning of the pandemic. At least 15 U.S. states step up their own efforts to encourage people to take a COVID-19 vaccine. Countries across the world are hurtling ahead with unprecedented plans to vaccinate millions of vulnerable adults and frontline healthcare workers. So we saw 3,000 deaths on Wednesday, December 9th in the U.S. COVID-related deaths were recorded, 3,000 COVID-related deaths, actually more than 3,000 COVID-related deaths were recorded across the country Wednesday, according to the NBC News tally. The number I saw on MSNBC today was 3,054. The previous single-day record was set April 22nd, when 2,861 deaths were reported. More than 2,900 more than 290,000 people have died from coronavirus across the U.S. Okay. So when we look at the updates from the Washington Post, we see after weeks of surge in infections and rising levels of virus hospitalizations, the United States recorded more than 3,000 COVID deaths in a single day, a pandemic record, according to Washington Post analysis. The harrowing milestone comes as two vaccine candidates appear to be on the verge of clearing the country's final regulatory hurdles. Let's see here. Yet the new death record, as well as a new high of more than 106,000 COVID-19 patients in hospitals, are grim reminders of the pandemic's devastating toll. Okay, you can check out the rest of the updates here. We'll post the links. Washington Post has really good live updates dealing with coronavirus, and there's a lot more. They have probably about 8 or 9 pages of information of news updates from across the country. I usually read those each day. Then also NBCnews.com. They have good live updates. They have a live blog dealing with coronavirus updates. Post-Thanksgiving surge arrives as U.S. breaks daily coronavirus record. The much fears had predicted from travel had gatherings and gatherings from travel and gatherings over Thanksgiving appears to have arrived. The U.S. reported a record high of 222,211 new cases, 222,211 new cases on Tuesday, marking the 5th day in the last week that single day counts have risen above 200,000, marking the 5th day in the last week that single day counts have risen above 200,000 new cases. New York and Ohio both reported over 10,000 new cases on Wednesday, December 9th. On Tuesday, New York and Ohio both reported over 10,000 new cases today. That would be I think that was for Wednesday. On Tuesday, December 8th, California reported more than 23,000 new cases, and Texas and Arizona reported over 10,000 cases each. Okay. Barbara Ferrer, Barbara Ferrer, the Los Angeles County Public Health Director, told the Los Angeles Times, "I would say this is the start of the Thanksgiving bump. I would say this is the start of the Thanksgiving bump." The U.S. has now reported a total of more than 15.2 million cases and surpassed 287,000 deaths, according to the latest NBC News tally. Okay, also, we saw that we found out today that Marcus Garvey Jr., the firstborn son of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, passed away in South Florida. The New York Carib News, CARIB, reported this December 9th, 2020. Marcus Garvey Jr., the firstborn son of Jamaica's national hero, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, died in Wellington, Florida on Tuesday, December 8th, 2020, losing his battle with Alzheimer's disease, a condition he had been battling for years. Marcus Garvey Jr. Was 90 years old. He was also a brilliant electrical engineer, physicist, and mathematician, and in many ways walked in his father's footsteps, becoming President General of the United Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA, United Negro Improvement Association, which Marcus Garvey founded in Jamaica in 1914, and then started setting up chapters in the U.S. when he came to the U.S. in 1916. Marcus Garvey Jr. was born in St. Andrew, Jamaica, and spent much of his time touring and lecturing across the Caribbean, North America, Europe, and Africa. His widow, Jean Garvey, disclosed, quote, "The departure of Marcus Garvey Jr., whom I had been married to for over 30 years, will leave a void that cannot be filled, and he will be greatly missed by numerous family, friends, and colleagues from all over the world, in many places where he had left indelible footprints." End quote. Now, Marcus Garvey Jr. survived by his wife Jean, younger brother Dr. Julius Garvey, sons Colin and Kyles Sekou, stepdaughter Michelle Morris, and 4 grandchildren. And homegoing plans will be announced. So this is from the New York Carib News. Their website is nycaribnews.com. Marcus Garvey Jr. passes away in South Florida. All right, lastly, December 9th is the birth date of one John Elroy Sanford. John Elroy Sanford, also known as Redd Foxx, and known to people all around the country and all around the world from a fictitious character he played named Fred Sanford, who was named after his brother. His father's name was Fred Sanford Sr. His brother's name was Fred Sanford Jr. Now, Redd Foxx portrayed Fred G. Sanford on the television show Sanford and Son, and starred in the Redd Foxx Show and The Royal Family. His film projects included All the Fine Young Cannibals in 1960, Cotton Comes to Harlem in 1970, Norman Is That You, 1976, and who could forget Harlem Nights in 1989? Oh my God. I've seen Harlem Nights literally about 100 times. I'm telling you, I've seen Harlem Nights literally about 100 times. And, you know, the classic lines from Harlem Nights, you know, please don't take this ass whooping personally, and Della Reese telling the police officers, kiss my entire ass, all types of stuff. Oh my God, there's just too much cussing in that movie. I'm sorry. Harlem Nights was crazy. So you had Richard Pryor in there, you had Eddie Murphy, you had Della Reese, Redd Foxx. Now, Redd Foxx was born John Elroy Sanford. John Elroy Sanford, that's his birth name, in St. Louis, Missouri, and raised in Chicago's South Side. His father's name was Fred Sanford. His father was an electrician and auto mechanic from Hickman, Kentucky. And his father left the family when John Elroy Sanford, or Redd Foxx, was 4 years old. He was raised by his half Seminole mother, Seminole Indian, his half Seminole Indian mother, Mary Hughes, from Ellisville, Mississippi. His grandmother and his minister, that's who raised him. His mother, who was half Seminole Indian, her name was Mary Hughes from Ellisville, Mississippi, and he was raised by his grandmother and his minister. Now, Redd Foxx attended DuSable High School in Chicago's Bronxville neighborhood with future Chicago Mayor Harold Washington. Redd Foxx had an older brother, Fred Sanford Jr., who provided the name for his character on the TV show Sanford and Son. In the 1940s, Redd Foxx met Malcolm Little. John Elroy Sanford met Malcolm Little, later known as Malcolm X. In Malcolm's autobiography, Redd Foxx is referred to as Chicago Red. Okay, and they meet in Harlem. Okay, they worked at a chicken restaurant in Harlem. Redd Foxx, Malcolm X said that Chicago Red was the funniest dishwasher on this earth. He earned the nickname Red because of his reddish hair and complexion. And Redd Foxx talked about how he and Malcolm X they were both light skinned. They were basically the same complexion. Okay, they both had red hair also. Okay, now there's a clip from what is this? Comedy Hype, I think it is. Yeah, Comedy Hype. There's a clip that deals with the unknown friendship of Redd Foxx and Malcolm X. The unknown friendship of Redd Foxx and Malcolm X. A story you should know. And from this episode of Comedy Hype, comedian Zooman Miller sits down to tell us the story of Redd Foxx and Malcolm X as longtime friends. Okay, let's go to this clip.
Harlem, New York, has a rich history of being a social and artistic place for Black artists. During this time, hundreds of notable artists were in the city at the same time, and many of them have crossed paths, even the ones that you never would have expected, including political leader Malcolm X and stand-up comedian Redd Foxx. Corey Zooman Miller, and here's a story that you should know. Malcolm X was in Harlem the same time as Redd Foxx, who was trying to make a name for himself as a stand-up comedian. Knowing what we know about Malcolm now, it's shocking to see how these two polar opposites were once friends. Redd Foxx was born John Elroy Sanford in December 1922. In the early 30s, Sanford moved to Chicago from St. Louis along with his brother and mom. While in Chicago, Sanford gained the performance bug after joining a band called the Four Bonbons. At the age of 16, Sanford dropped out of high school and decided to move to New York with the rest of his bandmates for a chance to make it big. The band changed their name to the Jump Swinging Six. Sanford started out singing. According to him, he soon realized that he was the funny-looking one within his group, so he started to tell jokes. The group broke up after appearing on national radio somewhere in the late 30s. While in Harlem, Sanford got a job at Jimmy's Chicken Shack, where he would meet and become close friends with Malcolm Little. At the time, he was called Detroit Red. Both Little and Sanford had similar beginnings. Sanford had come from Chicago to Harlem, while Malcolm came from Detroit. Both came from tough environments and eventually became hustlers together. The two had a lot in common, so it isn't difficult to see why the two were always together. They were both sharp dressers, and they had similar red hair. In the book Black and Blue, the Redd Foxx story, Sanford said, Malcolm was about the same color as me. You could hardly tell us apart. We both had those conchs, and our hair was red with a high pompadour. And we had them zoot suit pants, just like the high drape pants that Billie Holiday used to sing about in her blues. We became good buddies in a speakeasy, where later on I was a waiter. Chicago Redd was the funniest dishwasher on earth. Now he's making his living being funny at a nationally known stage and nightclub comedian. I don't see any reason why old Chicago Redd would mind me telling that he is Redd Foxx. The two worked at Jimmy's Chicken Shack in Harlem during the day and hustled the street together at night. They used to rob places together and sleep on rooftops together. Sanford said that he knew Malcolm had his back and he trusted him. Sanford told this piece of information to Anthony Major, who used to run Redd Foxx Productions in the mid-1980s. If Sanford was in a fight, he could turn his back and know Malcolm was going to be on the other side fighting with him. They stole suits and they resold them, dealt marijuana, other petty crimes, all together. When we got a job at Jimmy's Chicken Shack, we had all kinds of hustles going on. It was a business joint uptown, and we made a little extra side bread up in the checks and so forth. Sanford also admitted that he sold many zoot suits, and he and Malcolm stole from a nearby laundry business. They usually sold them on top of the same rooftops where they slept. We'd sell 1 or 2 of them a day on the rooftop, and we never got caught for that. I guess that balanced out some of the stuff that I had to pay for later on that I didn't do. Sanford further reflected on their time together, and he shared how neither one of them at the time was into politics. I remember one time Malcolm and I joined the Communist Party. Maybe not joined it, but signed something or other because they had white broads and food, and I ain't had no food. In about 2 weeks, you dance with these chicks, smell the perfume, and eat the sandwiches. Just couldn't avoid being a part of things like that because it was food, man. Stacked high cake and lemonade, even bologna. You could put your pocket full of bologna. I'd have joined the Ku Klux Klan if they had sandwiches. After running together for some time, Malcolm ended up getting himself into more trouble, making larger robberies and using harder drugs. Foxx decided to distance himself from Malcolm more, although the two were never on bad terms. Malcolm didn't have the showbiz talent, so he didn't give a goddamn what he got into. He'd take on anything to get some dough. He was a little bit more aggressive, but I'd rather be sleeping with a broad and go somewhere to a club and do 15 minutes of comedy than, all of that. After going their separate ways, Sanford continued to perform stand-up throughout the city. He caught a break when a nightclub in Baltimore needed an MC. While in Baltimore, Sanford changed his name to what we all know him as right now, Redd Foxx. Malcolm, on the other hand, continued to follow a life of crime, and he would end up getting arrested for burglary and is sentenced to 10 years in prison. While in prison, Malcolm educated himself by reading books on race, religion, history, literature, biology, and linguistics. He converted to Islam and began to follow the nation's principles, led by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. In prison, Malcolm Little changes his name to Malcolm X. After going their separate ways, it would be 20 years before Foxx and Malcolm would ever reunite. A photo had captured the two together after spending time apart. It's unclear whether this was the last time the two would see each other before Malcolm's assassination in 1965. It's fascinating to see these two figures had an impact on each other's lives before they became household names. Before John Sanford was Redd Foxx, and before Malcolm Little was Malcolm X. The two were simply trying to make a name for themselves during their humble beginnings.
All right. Okay, so check out that clip. The Unknown Friendship of Redd Foxx and Malcolm X. Story you should know. That's from Comedy Hype. That's on YouTube. We posted the link here. One quick correction. If I remember correctly, Malcolm took his ex after he left prison. He converts to Islam in prison, but if I remember correctly, he takes the ex after he leaves. He leaves prison in 1952. And it's going to be after he leaves prison, and then he He's going to meet Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but it's going to be shortly after he leaves prison. He's going to take the X. I don't think he took the X while he was in prison. Okay. But nonetheless, there's some good information there. And you can check out other information about Redd Foxx, John Elroy Sanford, Malcolm X, and other things. And, you know, I've played some interviews with Redd Foxx in the past. Maybe next few shows we'll share some other interviews that Redd Foxx has done also. Okay. Look, we have to get out of here. Hey, if you'd like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Also, and follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on live notifications so you know when we go live also. All right, hey, remember at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace.